You count out $4.85 in exact change at the gas station counter on Route 9. The same gas station, the same register, the same clerk who has rung you up every Tuesday for 6 years. You set the coins down one at a time. Nickels first, then quarters. The man behind you sighs. Not loud, just enough to be heard. You don't look up. You take the coffee, the worst coffee in town, and you drink it on the walk to the warehouse where you've worked since you were 26. That's the morning. That's all of it. Nothing about that morning would tell you anything. Here's the part nobody at Briggs Logistics knows. Not your supervisor, not the guys on the loading dock, not even Marisol, who has shared a bed with you for 11 years. Your brokerage account, the one under a name you don't say out loud at work, the one you check at 6:40 a.m. before anyone else is awake, sits at $3,412,000. Not company stock, not an inheritance, not a lottery ticket taped behind a frame somewhere. Index funds mostly. A few municipal bonds. One rental property 2 states over that a property manager handles, so you never have to drive past it. You make $51,000 a year operating a forklift and reconciling pallet counts. You have made roughly that amount, give or take, for the last decade. Nobody at that job has ever had a reason to think of you as anything but reliable. Steady. The guy who brings the same lunch every day in the same gray cooler and never once asks for an advance on his check. Here's how you got here, and it starts with a number most people would laugh at. At 19, working the register at a hardware store on Route 9, you opened a brokerage account with $300. You put in $40 a week after that, every week, whether you felt it or not, whether the week had been good or bad. At 24, you were putting in $220 a month into a fund that tracked 500 companies you couldn't name half of. At 29, after a raise nobody else noticed because you didn't change a single thing about how you lived, you were contributing $1,100 a month. You drove a car with 200,000 miles on it. You did this on purpose. At 33, you crossed $1 million in net worth. At 38, you crossed $2 million. The same year you turned down a foreman position because it would have meant moving and answering more questions than you wanted to answer. By 41, the number was where it is now. You remember exactly where you were when you crossed the first million. Standing in the kitchen of a rented duplex looking at a number on a screen that was supposed to mean something had changed. Nothing had changed. You still had a shift the next morning. You still had to take the trash out before 8. You made a sandwich, turkey, no condiments, because that's what was in the fridge. And you went to bed at the same time you always did. That's the part people don't expect. The flat part. The part where the mountain you were supposedly climbing turns out to have no summit feeling at all. $1 million looked, in the end, like a string of digits next to a dollar sign on a phone screen, held in a kitchen with a floor that needed mopping and a faucet that had been dripping since March. Here's what nobody tells you about money, not the kind on paper, not the kind that sits quietly compounding while you sleep. It doesn't change the morning. It doesn't change the alarm at 5:15. It doesn't make the coffee taste better or the walk to work any shorter. The only thing it changes is what's true, privately, underneath a life that otherwise looks exactly the same as it did before. You are richer. You are not different. Those are 2 separate facts, and almost nobody believes that until they're the one holding both of them at once, standing in their own kitchen, waiting to feel something that never arrives. The cost of this isn't the kind you put on a spreadsheet. The cost is quieter than that. It's Marisol asking 3 years ago whether you could maybe help her sister with a security deposit, $400, and watching you do the math out loud about a tight month, when the truth was you could have covered her sister's rent for a year without noticing the dent. It's Dale Pruitt, who runs the dock 2 bays down from you, talking for 20 minutes about a knee. Surgery he can't afford to schedule, and you nodding and saying, "That's rough, man," and not saying anything else because saying anything else would mean explaining 11 years of a number you've never said out loud to a single person who knows your face. 2 winters ago, your mother needed $4,000 for a procedure her insurance wouldn't cover, and you paid it through a billing office under a different name so she'd think it was charity care, and she still doesn't know, and probably never will. It's not guilt, exactly. It's something thinner than guilt. It's the specific loneliness of being known by people who only know part of you, and choosing every single day to keep it that way. You tell yourself it's about safety, about not becoming the guy people quietly start asking things of, about keeping a marriage and a friendship simple in a world that gets complicated fast once real money walks into the room. Maybe that's true. It still costs something to be loved for a version of yourself that isn't whole. You have eaten lunch alone in your truck more Tuesdays than you'd admit to anyone, not because you were excluded, but because some days the gap between the gray cooler and the brokerage app feels too wide to sit across a break room table and pretend it isn't there. You have watched your own son ask if you could go to a better summer camp like his friend Owen, the one with the lake and the climbing wall, and you said maybe next year and meant it the way a man means something he has already decided the answer to a long time ago. This morning, you're back at the gas station on Route 9. Same register, same clerk. You count out $4.85 in exact change. Nickels first, then quarters. Because that's what you do. Because the version of you that counts coins is the version everyone agreed to know 11 years ago. And changing it now would require a conversation you have rehearsed in your head 100 times and never once started out loud. The man behind you sighs again. You still don't look up. You take the coffee, the worst coffee in town, and you walk to the warehouse, past the loading dock where Dale is already pulling on his gloves, past the office window where your supervisor is on the phone about a shipment that's running late, and somewhere behind all of it,